Thank you for that glowing introduction. I am really super happy to be back again doing another webinar for you guys, and I'm really pleased that you guys have given me your Thursday evening to tune in for this topic. Definitely very, very relevant right now. What I'm going to do is quickly share my screen so I can share some slides with you, and then yeah, we can get into it. Let's go like this, and how's that for everyone? Top tips for delivering safe and sustainable events. Give me a nod if it's looking okay for you. Okay, fantastic. Is it skipping through? It's saying that I'm paused. Bear with me for 1 second.
Is it? Oh, we're going up again. Yes. It wasn't on PowerPoint. It wasn't on your slide. Yeah, there you go.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Right, take two. I'm thinking that a lot of you have probably tuned in for this topic because you have an interest in how we can make events in the future safer. The original title for this was in a post-COVID world, how would we do that? But I think we are having to accept now that there is maybe no such thing as a post-COVID world. And even if we do find a vaccine, there are also other illnesses and things that people can get. And we just, from now on, have this responsibility to make our events safer and understand more about how we can contribute to that as event managers. So maybe you've come for the safety aspect, maybe you've come for the sustainability side of things, maybe you want to know how we can be greener in our events. I wanted to put these topics together instead of tackling them separately because I personally think they are completely related to each other, and I think that there has been this seismic shift in the events industry and everything is changing, and this is such a great opportunity to implement change that not only keeps people safe but also makes change for a more green, environmentally friendly world of events. So look, I think if we don't kind of tackle these things together, there's a real danger of kind of pushing the kind of green initiative the other way. So I want to be kind of really mindful of that. So that's why these things are together, and we'll kind of cover a few kind of topics of ways and like really practical stuff, I guess, that you guys can follow for your events as and when they start to get going again. There is a little caveat here as well, which is that we're talking about safety at events here, but I just wanted to say that was very much around kind of COVID safety. Obviously, as event managers, there's like a whole nother aspect of safety. There's like the health and safety piece. You'd still need to be doing your own risk assessments for things like weather hazards, fire hazards, crowd control, that kind of thing. I'm not talking about that kind of safety today. I'm really focusing on COVID and sustainability and how those two kind of are going to be showing up in the future. So a little bit about me before we start. If I can go to the next slide. So as Bex said, I am the founder of Vodka on Toast. We are a little boutique events agency. I started Vodka on Toast in 2017. That was my route out of corporate events, which I'd been in for about 13 years. I wanted to work on different projects, different clients, kind of change things up a little bit. So I started Vodka on Toast, and I've been working on that ever since and work with a real variety of clients. It could be on private events, corporate events, incentive travel, black tie, various, very, very various, and on a global level, or at least it was until 2020, and it hopefully will be again at some point. But what we're about is creating unique event experiences with heart. That means that we really care about the events and our clients, and really what we want is to make events that make the world a better place for everyone. So you can probably see from that why this topic is so close to me personally. It's very kind of in line with what we do and what we care about at Vodka on Toast. So a couple of questions for you to get started. Thinking about the next event, either that you're going to go to or you're going to organise, just want you to kind of think about kind of what you could be doing to help keep you safe from COVID if you were going to an event. Have you thought about what your responsibilities might be as an event manager, your responsibility to your delegates, your staff, and to the environment as well? And have you thought about, will you have to compromise? Will you have to compromise on sustainability to make sure that safety is right up there? And over the course of the next few slides and the topics that we'll talk about today, hopefully I can provide some answers to these questions, and I'm sure that you'll have some of your own ideas too, and I'd love to hear them. So, my first tip for you is to educate yourself. The very beginning of all of this is that knowledge is power, and you need to kind of make sure that you are up to date on the latest guidelines from the government and medical advice from the WHO, and just kind of make sure that you kind of have as much knowledge as possible. Now, I do realise that it can feel quite overwhelming trying to keep up with the constant updates around COVID, and there are a lot of changes, and the guidance does change a lot. So it's not necessarily something you need to be doing every day, but like making sure that you have done the right research. There's kind of plenty of white papers online that you can read from different organisations if you want to do a bit of reading like that. There's also some online accreditations that you could do if you wanted to do some more formal training. You can also look to companies such as The Bulb or Legacy Events. I'll give those a shout out. They're events companies who specialise in sustainable events. They have loads of resources available for you as well. So, looking at those sorts of sources to kind of make sure that you have the right knowledge and make sure that you've kind of thought about these topics and that you have the information, super key. Why is it important? Well, two reasons. One is because you are going to be making decisions as the event manager. You're going to be making decisions that affect the health of other people, and therefore you have a personal responsibility to make sure that you have the right information and that it's up to date and it's accurate. And secondly, your clients and your stakeholders and the people coming to your event are going to look to you. You don't have to be absolute subject matter specialist, but they are going to ask questions about how do we make this safe? How many staff do we need to help clean things? How, and like all of these kind of things that clients, they won't know. You need to be able to kind of provide them with confidence and assurances that you've done your due diligence and that you're providing them with the right advice. So yeah, spend a bit of time making sure that you have all the knowledge that you need. Some resources. So I mentioned The Bulb and Legacy Events are really great on the sustainability side of things. Gov.uk is kind of my go-to place for current legislation, whether that's about the rules in offices or opening events or that kind of thing. But there are plenty of resources online, and if anyone would like to chat to me after this about other places to go to get some more information, then please do reach out. Okay. So my second tip is around PPE. If you hadn't heard of PPE at the start of the year, I'm pretty sure you will have heard of it by now. It stands for Personal Protective Equipment, and I used to think of it as hard hats and high-vis jackets, but now we think of it as things like face masks and rubber gloves and equipment that helps to keep us safe. I wanted to put this fairly high up in what I was talking to you guys about today, because I read two statistics, which I'm going to share with you now, that I found very shocking. One is that plastic face masks take 450 years to decompose. I brought one, don't judge me, but I bought them to begin with, and I've got one here. Plastic face masks, these kind, they look like they would be recyclable, but they are not, because technically they're bio-waste, so they have to go into landfill. If you have one and you just throw it away, please don't put it in your recycling, because it essentially means that all of the things in the recycling are then contaminated. Realistically, what happens is people get these, they throw them in the bin, they then go in landfill. 450 years. It's just like, it's many, many lifetimes. The second thing is that we are using an estimate of 129 billion of these face masks, 65 billion plastic gloves every month at the moment. And I get it, people need to protect themselves. They need to keep themselves safe, and it's important that we kind of put that kind of human life forwards first. But in terms of events, we can do a little bit of thinking about how we can kind of maybe make some changes so that we're not contributing as much to these figures. So sourcing reusable and sustainable PPE is my recommendation to you. So cotton washable masks is kind of my recommendation. I've got some here. You can also support small businesses by buying things like this. So you can get them on the internet. People are kind of making them. You can wash them, reuse them. I would be saying give these out to delegates if you can. Give these out to delegates at your event. they can use them, take them with them. They are then using that mask in the future as well. So it's a really big win for the environment, I think, if we can make that change and make that switch. And you can also do things like you could get a particular pattern or like company colours or like branded colours or something like that, so that when your delegates are arriving, it's a nice kind of bit of a branding touch for your event as well. It's one option. So the only other thing that I was going to mention around this topic is if you're at an event where you do need to use this kind of mask, the kind of non-recyclable single-use mask, there is a company called TerraCycle UK who will provide you for a small fee. They will deliver a special waste bin to you for your delegates to put their used PPE, so that can be gloves or masks. They put it in that bin. They then take that away and they recycle it properly and fully. So if you can't do the cotton reusable masks, then I would recommend that you maybe look at TerraCycle UK and just kind of add that to your kit list for your event if you're going to be using those sorts of products. Similar vein, continuing with the PPE chat here, is around hand sanitizer and hand washing. So we kind of talked a little bit about these reusable gloves already. The science around these is that they don't really massively protect you all that much from COVID, because all that happens is you get germs on the glove, and then you touch your phone or you touch a stand at the exhibition, and it just transfers the germs around. So these aren't really a good suggestion to be handing out to delegates. You don't want to give them a false sense of security that they're suddenly then protected. What you want to be doing is providing plenty of hand washing stations, so soap and water. And if you can't provide hand washing stations, then you need to be providing hand sanitizer stations, so that when people are walking around the event, they have a regular opportunity to sanitize their hands. You can give out little bottles. I'm pretty sure there's companies out there doing branded bottles as well. If you wanted to do like an event branded hand sanitizer, that is very, very possible. A little added ethical bonus is if you can source cruelty-free products, then for me, I think that's a kind of a good way to go just thinking about our kind of contribution to the world as a whole. If you shop cruelty-free, then they're not testing the products on animals. And some brands out there, I've listed a few. There's a Body Shop one, a Beauty Kitchen one, and a Fulvisave. I always say that wrong. Fulvisave. And all of those products are cruelty-free. The Beauty Kitchen one especially does refillable as well, so you don't have to keep buying bottle after bottle after bottle. So a really good green option if you have the budget, and another just like a great step that you could take just to kind of reduce the impact that your event has on the rest of the world. Cool. So those are my kind of first 3 points. I'm really happy to take a little break here, maybe answer a few questions, or we can talk a bit more about those topics. Bex, what do you reckon?
Great time. Does anybody have any questions for Zoe at the moment? Anything at all? Just literally pop your microphone on. It's probably the easiest way.
What do you think about event branded masks? Do you think that would work? Or?
I'm sorry, I didn't see who asked the question because I couldn't see your screen, but hello, and hi, yeah, Sally, hello. Hi. Event branded ones. Yeah, I think I've got sort of mixed feelings about it. I think that if it's super duper branded, how likely is that person, I guess it depends what the brand is maybe, but how likely is that person to use that mask again if it's a brand where they're like, well, do I want to be walking around Sainsbury's with this logo? So I think it kind of depends on the brand, and I think it could be quite a giggle for things like company get-togethers. If we start doing kind of small company gatherings, if you have like the company logo on, nice photo opportunity, everybody with their masks on, staying safe. Another way of doing it is maybe you don't have a logo, but maybe you just use the colour scheme of that company. So I can't think of a brand off the top of my head, but a brand that's kind of green and white, you don't put the logo, but you do use their colour scheme, and that means that your delegates are more likely to use this again in the future, would be my suggestion.
Sally, if I may, I think there's also the thinking, there are some brands that, it's about understanding your audience, isn't it? There are some brands that are aspirational and people like to wear their logos and like to show off the logos. So I think it depends on what the brand is really, and them and the audience that they're trying to talk to as well. Susan, do you have a question?
Also, a way of getting people to use the masks again is you can get the washable ones that are made out of silver ion antimicrobial fabric, which means that they've got a natural sanitization within the fibres of the fabric. So if you're going to try and encourage someone to use something again on the sustainability side, as well as promoting a brand that may be printed on it, then that might be a consideration to think about, because it's an ongoing antimicrobial virus-fighting rather than just body.
I don't know who this is, but Admin Summit, who's that? I don't know the name behind it. He's just asked Zoe, said, as event planners, would we be able to include the cost of PPE to our clients?
Yeah.
I reckon, yeah.
For sure. It's going to be just part and parcel of the budgets now, I think. It's just, companies are going to have to spend a little bit more. I think there are kind of good deals out there for kind of buying in bulk and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it becomes like any other line item on a budget to a client to say, like, this is the cost of safety. And this is what it's going to, but they won't be allowed to do their events without it as well. So I think should be some kind of fair understanding around it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll be expecting that cost. They'll be expecting to face that cost because they can't run the event without it. Any other questions for Zoe? Anybody? No? Okay, well, we'll leave it at that. Zoe, are you okay to carry on?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's go back to this.
Oh, hang on, there is one more. Sorry to interrupt. Jennifer has said, hello from Scotland. Hello, Jennifer. How clear is the guidance from the government on requirement for PPE on events? I think it's so to you, Zoe.
Yeah, yes. I would say somewhat clear. I mean, it was about a month ago or so that a lot of the things moved from this is law to this is guidance. And for me, there's, from what I've read, there's kind of more information available at the moment about how people might operate in office spaces and how they would share space in that sense. I think it's still quite fresh, the event side of things, in terms of like exactly how a gathering should take place. I don't think we can have gatherings of more than 30 at the moment. I think that's the current cap. Maybe someone will correct me if that's wrong. There isn't like too much detail at the moment over specifically what that would look like for events, but I do think that is coming. I think given that we at the moment have a beginning of October, we're going to be allowed to have conferences and business meetings and that kind of thing. I think we'll give you an indication of when we'll start to see more detailed guidelines in terms of events specifically, probably towards the end of September. But there's lots of stuff out there at the moment that is about PPE in general. So PPE in the office, PPE in shops, and when you're out and about, and when you're meeting with friends and in restaurants. So I look at those sorts of guidelines, especially the things around kind of like restaurants and things. I look at those sorts of guidelines and I think, right, how would that translate to an event? I think the other thing is that events are very, very varied, very different. So, there is not going to be a kind of one rule fits them all. I think that what it's going to look like is that every event will need a risk assessment where you look at some kind of important factors. PPE would be one of them, and signage and how you are communicating to your delegates and what the rules are for your specific event will all form part of that risk assessment. And I think every event will need a specific risk assessment because every event is different, and therefore the risk of transmission of COVID-19 is so variable. So I think there's more to come for sure. But there's plenty out there to kind of be getting on with in terms of starting to learn what these guidelines are, for now at least. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Zoe. Okay, should we carry on?
Yes. Okay.
Thanks, Zoe.
So, nope, that's not screen sharing. Let's come back here. Screen share, PowerPoint. Okay. How to zoom?
Is it frozen again?
It says it's paused. So I do it like this every time.
And you're back.
Sharing,
Well done.
and number 4. Brilliant. So moving away from PPE, I wanted to talk a little bit about event technology and the role that event technology can play in our efforts to make events safer and more sustainable. So here's four kind of areas. One is around delegate registration, electronic event communications, event apps, and electronic signage. There are more, but those are kind of the main ones that I have been thinking about. I think what I wanted to say was that, event technology, I've been so impressed in the last sort of, how long has it been now? 6 months. Since lockdown began, the creativity and ingenuity of some of these companies, of the kind of technology that they've come up with, and how they've innovated to make technology that allows us to do online events, virtual events, and kind of still be connecting with people. It's amazing. It's amazing. So like event technology is just this huge subject anyway. It's very cool how it's kind of helping us connect with people when we can't be together. I think there are ways in which we can leverage this technology in the future to help make our events safer. I think my point around sustainability and technology is really that, are there opportunities for you to reduce the amount of things that you need to print or kind of use one time, like single-use items, and replace those items with technology. So I guess the things I'm thinking of are, could you use an event app to house information about speakers? Maybe you don't need to print biographies. Maybe you don't need to print kind of brochures about the event. Maybe like ticketing and things like that can all be done electronically now so easily that, those are ways that we can basically just not create. Just don't make things. Don't make things unless you need to make things. And also, if you can rent technology, then that's better than buying something new. So it's better to rent a screen, put your table plan or your site map or whatever it is that, that branded information up on there. And then someone else can use that another time, and you don't have a printed table plan that, you then throw away at the end of the event. So I would be looking for any opportunity to kind of replace something that you're only ever going to use once with some kind of technology that kind of helps you achieve the same thing. And there are lots and lots of options out there. I think in terms of the safety side of things and where kind of COVID comes into all of this, there are quite a few new steps that we're going to have to be taking in order to keep our events safe. And a lot of them are to do with how we communicate with our delegates. So things like pre-event screenings. We already, when we plan our events, take data from people, their names and their email addresses and what companies they come from. We're also probably going to, for certain events, be asking them health questionnaire questions and things like a travel questionnaire of what countries they've been to or where they've been recently. And, having that data on that person for like track and trace as well will be super important. So is the technology for your event set up in a way that can gather all of this information and you can refer back to it? That might be your online registration system, making sure you're gathering all this information. It might be through an event app where people can register before, and perhaps I've seen things where there's kind of a health declaration before the event that all of your staff and your delegates would declare beforehand that they have not had any symptoms and that they are fit and well to come to the event. So using this sort of technology to do that kind of thing is going to be super, super helpful, I think. I think the other piece of this is, I guess, more around communication, but can you be using your pre-event comms, whether that's by email or through the event app, can you be using those things to communicate to delegates what's going to be the plan for the event? Because people will want to know, and some people will be unsure about whether they want to come to your event, and you communicating to them through an app or through an email saying, this is what's going to happen at the event, these are the measures we've put in place, this is how we're going to keep you safe, we are going to have social distancing in place, it's going to be 1 meter or 2 meter or and we assure you that the chairs are going to be separated, or, whatever it is that you need to say to people, you need to kind of find a channel to let people know all of that information. So the technology that already exists for our events is going to be a really great way of kind of leveraging that, and we can use it to our advantage. Another couple of ideas for you here. Nice bits of technology that you'll be seeing at events in the future. Body temperature scanners. So on arrival, certain events, you'll be able to scan delegates' temperature as they come in. I think you've probably seen it in airports and things like that on the news. I think it's 37.5 is the highest temperature that will be considered before it's thought that you have a fever, at which point you wouldn't be allowed to come into the event, you would be turned away. So these scanners are pretty cool bits of kit, and you can either hire them, or if you do lots of events, you can buy one and then just hire it out to clients on a regular basis. And UVC lamps as well. There is quite a lot of evidence at the moment that UV light neutralizes or sanitizes coronavirus. So using UV light to clean rooms, if you have an event room that needs to be cleaned, or maybe cleaning items as they're coming through the event, things like that, then yeah, you might be seeing a little bit more of UV lamps to do kind of sanitizing as well. So a few neat ideas and a few nice bits of kit to play around with when we get back to doing our events. Okay, so I wanted to talk about high quality online streaming as a way of making our events safer and sustainable. I think the kind of my first tip to you is really to work with a production company, so that if you are hosting a live event, you can also provide an online stream. So that means that people can attend your event without having to be there in person, and it means that less people are going to be in the room, and it means that less people are going to have to travel. So, it might be that you could just completely live stream an event like this one, and nobody has to be together at all, and obviously, being at home is the most safe option. But, you may well consider doing a hybrid setup, and I know that the Event Academy are doing some course. Bex will be able to tell you a bit more about it later, but I know there's a course about how to do amazing virtual events and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll talk to everyone about it when you're finished. But yeah, it's a masterclass on how best to organise virtual events.
So having this option, I think, is a great idea, because essentially it just reduces the people that are travelling. It's a better carbon footprint for the event. You're reducing the number of materials that you need to provide for the event, and you're letting people stay at home, and you're giving people the choice. And a lot of this is, a lot of this year has kind of felt like we've had a lot of choices taken away from us. And I think it's about finding a way to let people feel safe at your event and give them a choice to stay safe, whether that for them is staying at home or attending and wearing a mask, or whatever that might look like for them. But I will also just kind of stress that I've deliberately said high quality online stream here, because if you are hosting a virtual event, you want people to feel like they're getting the same experience as if they were in the room, and that you kind of need to make sure that you are referring to them, and that they make them feel included and kind of part of what you're doing. So I think that part of it is fairly important as well. And finally, on a similar vein around travel, just be mindful, I guess, be thoughtful when you are picking your venue, so that you are placing the venue that in a place that's quite near to delegates. I think the idea of making something a kind of destination event isn't going to be as popular, because it forces everybody to travel, it forces everybody to get on a plane or go somewhere. So really, I think what's going to be more popular in terms of keeping people safe from COVID is going to be to put the event somewhere so local that people can walk to it or they can bike to it. And you might even think about incentivizing that. So you might think about doing a gift or a voucher for something for people that actually choose to use greener methods of transport to get to your event. And it just so happens that kind of the greener options, like walking and using bikes, are also the more COVID safe options. Trains are a little bit better than aeroplanes in terms of kind of transmission, and then people that couldn't come on a train or walk or use their bike, then that's why we would be looking at the kind of online streaming option. So some options there for you about just kind of making sure that people can access the event, but that you're also just being mindful of the travel you're asking people to do, because travel has a big impact on the number of other people are coming in contact with, and also the environment as well. So, those are kind of sort of the end of my formally prepared points. I'm really happy to take some questions. I think before I do that, I was really just going to kind of summarize and say that, I just wanted to really reiterate that to me these two things really do come hand in hand, and we as event managers have such an amazing opportunity in front of us to be able to really change what the industry looks like, and it's a great opportunity. And I think with that opportunity, there's also a risk that, if we rush into our events and we just think, right, we've got to get these events COVID safe, if we're not thoughtful and mindful, then it would be very, very easy to kind of undo a lot of good work around the environmentally friendly piece of events that was already kind of building momentum. So, I think there are lots of ways in which you can keep both of these things in mind. Hopefully I've shown you some easy steps and measures that you can take. I'm kind of very excited to see what we can do in terms of shaking up the status quo at our events in the future.
Great. Thanks so much, Zoe. That's super insightful. Okay, so let's open it up for some more questions, because I think it is great just to be able to ask what comes into people's minds. There's a lot of content there, and maybe stuff that we kind of knew a bit about, but not quite the detail, and also the implications. You kind of think it will be simple to make events safe, but actually there's quite a lot of elements that we've got to kind of get in place to make sure that clients are happy, that suppliers are happy, that audiences are happy. There's a lot of kind of reassurance that needs to be in place. So let's. I've got one question here from Hannah. Hannah, do you want to ask it, or do you want me to? Where are you? Can't see her on the screen. Go, Hannah. Do you want to ask Zoe? I think your microphone's off. Sorry. No? I'll ask it for you, Hannah, don't worry. So Hannah says, what are the legalities around scanning people's temperatures? Would including it in your T's and C's be enough to make it compulsory, or do people still have... Ooh, it's just jumped, sorry. Or do people still have the right to refuse?
Yeah, good question. I think that everybody gets a choice, right? So the event has the right to say, that these are the conditions of our event, and the conditions of our event are that we do temperature scanning. People have the right to refuse, but then the event then has the right to not admit them to the event. And that's pretty much always been the case, that ultimately the venue or the event company running the event has the right to refuse admitting anyone. I would say that not every event would necessarily need temperature scanning. So a lot of these things are a judgment call, which is what makes it challenging, really. So if it's, let's say, like a small team meeting of maybe 15 or 20 people, and they're getting together and it's in an outdoor location, there may be some, you'll have to do the risk assessment on that particular event, but it might not be deemed necessary that event would need temperature scanning. But if it was something that was considered a high-risk event, so a higher volume of people, perhaps like an exhibition or something, it might be absolutely necessary and for the greater good to say that this has to be a condition of it. I don't think legally you can force anyone to do it, but I think you can just say you can't come in if you don't comply to this. I think the comms bit is really important, because it's all about spin, isn't it? It's all about marketing. And if you give people the information up front, if you phrase it in a way that says, like, this is what we're going to be doing, this is why, if you help people to feel that it's not intrusive, I think most people will go along with it. I guess you're always going to have people that would find that too intrusive and wouldn't, want us to be doing that kind of thing, or maybe keeping data on them as well. I know people have some concerns about the amount of data that's being kept by restaurants and events in the future, about their health and their travel and their whereabouts and things. And it's really challenging, but I think giving people a choice, but being clear, and being honest about what is really necessary for your event. Don't take wildly extravagant steps if you don't need to. But if you need to be safe, and then in order for that event to go ahead, then do it, and kind of just be true to that.
Yeah, and especially currently, safety has got to come first, doesn't it? The peace of mind for everybody. Great. Okay, lots of other questions coming in. Let me just see. Sarah, do you want to ask your question, Sarah Bennett?
Sure. Hello. So you kind of just touched on it in your previous answer, but it's just in relation to, do we or should we be making much different considerations for indoor to outdoor events?
Yeah, very different. So I think the outdoorsiness of it makes it safer. So then you've also got to consider the capacity as well. So like how compact is it as an indoor event versus an outdoor event? So yeah, definitely you would consider those two in different ways, and perhaps the measures for an outdoor event would be less stringent, shall we say.
Great. I'm speaking for other people. Spue, do you want me to ask your question, or do you want to? Okay, I'll ask for. So Spue just said, how will social distancing make events profitable? Very tricky question.
Oh, I know. It's hard, isn't it? Because, if you can't absolutely pack your event with loads of people, then how do you kind of make enough money? And I think what companies are having to do is kind of rewrite the model a little bit and go back to looking at where does the revenue come from this. So if your revenue for an event comes from selling tickets, then can you make money in another way that tops up the now you can only have 50 people instead of 100 people. How do you make up that shortfall? So you get creative and you look for ways to maybe package and resell the content from that event the other day. Can you do a live stream and charge for it online? And I saw a question somewhere around how much you would charge for a live stream. Probably not as much to attend in person, but charge something. Content is valuable and it takes time to produce it. And, I think it's important to put a price on your work. So, can you be repackaging the content for the event, charging it for a live stream, hosting it online so that people can watch it on demand? All those sorts of things. And also things like, I'm seeing a lot of partnerships and collaborations between brands at the moment, where companies are kind of coming together to say, right, what can we do that we could make profitable together based on lower profit margins? And everybody's feeling the squeeze, but at the minute companies are, from my experience, I am able to get pretty good prices at the moment from certain suppliers that I am going to for quotes, because they want the work as much as I want the work, and everybody is having to cut their costs a bit, but that means that the cost of the events are lower and therefore your profit margins are higher. So there's a way, but also maybe part of it is just accepting that maybe the profit won't be as much as before, but you kind of have to go back to looking at what are your sources of revenue from that event, and can you create some new ones based on this new world order?
Yeah, great, thank you. I think, Sally, that kind of answers your question around virtual attendance. It's a tricky one to know how much you can charge, but it should be people. You don't want to cannibalise. You don't want people to think, "Oh, it's all right, I'll just get it online." You want to incentivise people to come as well. So I think it is definitely worthwhile charging. Ethel said she's got a couple of questions. Do you want to put your microphone on, Ethel?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
Hello.
So one maybe slightly off topic, but about sustainability. Do you find clients more willing to contribute or to adapt to engage with the sustainability issue, like recycle, or I don't know, go to festival and knock down all their stuff, or not? So that's first one. Second one is, what would you suggest to somebody like me? I've almost finished the postgrad student course, and what would you suggest me to do? Like leave my job, go out there in 1 month 2 months? I know, that billion-dollar question.
Good question. Let's ask everyone that question, because it's, I mean, I think a lot of people are in the same boat on that one. Okay, well, let's kind of tackle that question next, because without knowing your particular situation, it's hard to say too closely, but I do appreciate that there's a lot of talent out there at the moment in the events industry, and a lot of kind of displaced people of like not kind of sure which jobs to go into and kind of which industries to follow. So I don't know if I have an answer for you other than just to say that sometimes in times of change like this, there are little pockets of opportunity that come up, and I think at the moment it's about being agile enough that when one of those opportunities comes up, and whatever that looks like that's right for you, that you can kind of go for it, and just kind of being flexible enough to do that. A lot of companies are having to diversify. I know that I have diversified from what I thought I would be working on in January to what I do now. I've really kind of opened up. I'm looking at doing more private events because things like weddings and birthday parties are happening. I wasn't really focusing on that kind of thing now, but like I'm gonna kind of try and get into that because that's where the opportunity is. Just trying to be flexible, and that's advice that somebody gave me a few months ago when I was like, I don't know what to do next. If I can't do international events, then what? And I was told to stay agile, so I will pay that forward to you. And good luck to all of you.
Transferable skills, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is the most important thing. We say often it isn't rocket science. There's skills that you can apply across different sectors, and I understand you're not necessarily an expert, but they're definitely same principles. Does that answer your questions, Ethel?
Yes. What was the first
about the sustainability? Quickly.
Yes. The sustainability side. So this is what I do. I don't give clients and stakeholders a choice. Essentially, I like from day one, any proposal or if I'm pricing something up for someone, or if someone's like, can you do me an event outline for a conference that looks like this? They've always got a slide in there about sustainability, and I've already done the thinking for them. So I will say, right, these are the 5 things that you can do for this event specifically that will make your event more sustainable. And that might be the kind of catering they're using, or it might be, can we use like plates and cutlery that can be washed again rather than disposable stuff? But I'll have worked it out for them. So it's literally just a case of them going, oh, okay. And if you present someone with it, they want it. And they're not, most of the time, unless it's like wildly expensive, which usually it's not. If you just say, look, these are the 5 things that you can do, it's only going to cost you X. Maybe it's even cheaper because you're cutting some costs elsewhere. They'll just go for it. I just don't give them an option to do anything else, essentially. And I think that's my new method with like COVID measures as well, to be honest. That I don't want to go around the table being like, well, what do you guys want to do about it? I'm just going to be like, you just do these things, and like this is how you get past your risk assessment, and this is how you make your event a low risk event rather than a high risk event, and spoon feed them.
Great. Okay, I'm reading more questions here. Sally, did you want to ask a question? Do you want to ask another one?
Do you know what the maximum number of attendees will be for events from October?
I don't know, actually.
We'll know the week before, won't we?
Yeah,
probably.
There's a lot of speculation, isn't there?
Okay.
Yeah, I know, and it's so varied globally as well. So, in some places I've seen that you can have exhibitions of up to sort of 1,500 people, but you have to have social distancing in place, and other places you can't. But focusing on the UK, I don't think there's anything definitive right now that says how many people you'll be able to have.
Yeah. Caroline Leheny, did you want to ask your question? If she's online, or I'll ask it. Is she there? Hello. No?
I'm having issues with my internet, excuse me.
Don't worry, go on.
To organise some return to work staff events in September, And I just wondered if anybody else is doing anything in September and has any thoughts on maximum numbers, etc.
It's an open question. Is anybody else doing that? Is anybody else tasked with having to do some people returning to work? Doesn't look like it. No, sorry. I think you're on your own there, Caroline. Was there a particular concern that you had? Oh, sorry, go.
Oh no, I was just gonna. I did have just a couple of thoughts on it, because this is something that I've thought about in terms of like teams getting back together, and like we're losing that company culture by not being together in person. As much as I love working from home, the companies are starting to get people together, and because you can gather in an office because it's an office space, then you can kind of do a team event. I think 30 is the maximum for any particular gathering. If it's in an office space, then they have to follow the guidelines for offices being open, which involves certain social distancing measures and use of masks and adequate provision of hand sanitizer and things like that. So I'd be looking at, it's on gov.uk, the how to reopen your office guidelines. There's probably quite a lot in there that would be useful for you that you could translate to an office or work event. I think if you are doing an event that's not in the office, then I'm not sure what the guidelines are for venues. I think the venue would have to kind of best advise on what their capacities are at the moment. But I've not seen anything where you're allowed more than 30 people for anything.
No, not in terms of recommendations. Is it Ailing? Ailing, I think it is. Do you want to say your question?
Yeah, sorry, one of those strange Irish names.
No, it's not strange.
Spelled Aisling, pronounced Ashling, just to keep us all on our toes.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for correcting me. Yeah.
It's fine. My question was really around what do you think the knock-on effects are and the extra considerations that people need to be taking for people with accessibility requirements?
Are you thinking in terms of entry into events? Like how? Yeah. Could you
I'm thinking in terms of sort of entry and management around. So I don't think it will have such a big knock-on effect in terms of the virtual world, because if somebody had special hearing or visual requirements, you'd have had those things in place already. But in terms of the physical, if somebody, for example, needs a PA to assist them physically getting around a live event, but all of those sorts of considerations, if somebody needs, because we're not doing things in print so much anymore, a lot more of the communications will be electronic. If you have somebody with a visual impairment, it's a bit of a minefield of extra people that it might involve, and therefore affect your capacities and the physical contact, all of those sorts of things. And so many questions.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and to be honest, it's not something I've massively thought about before. Now you've mentioned it, I'm thinking, how is that going to work? I think from what I understand, the spacing out of events is going to be much greater. So in a way, I think that will kind of make things a little bit easier in terms of kind of creating a bit more space between things. But yeah, I mean, certainly we should be having those conversations anyway around how is this content accessible? How, if someone is visually impaired, will they be able to digest the content from the screen? And I think technology is possibly the answer to a lot of things in terms of, can we have translation services and those sorts of things available? Could people be listening in, or maybe we do need to have kind of braille signage, or perhaps if there was someone coming with a particular impairment, do we need to have extra staff who can help them navigate the event in that way? There's always a way with these things, but yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, because you don't want to compromise on that person's experience of the event. I wonder if there's certain, I know, for example, that not everyone has to wear a face mask. There are certain people who, I think, if they have particular breathing difficulties, or that they don't have to. So I wonder whether there are some exceptions, I guess, to the rule, that if somebody could say, for medical reasons, I cannot do this, or, I need to have someone come with me and they'll not be socially distancing, we'll stay together. But, if someone was able to kind of communicate that to us before the event, then I'm sure you'd be able to kind of make a special rule for that person. I don't think for a larger event it's not going to massively impact how risky your event is. If you just suddenly said everybody can do anything, then but if it's like one person or two people, it's probably gonna not kind of change things too much to make sure that they can still enjoy and participate in the event in the way that they need to.
Thank you.
No worries, Aisling. Now I've got it right.
Thanks.
Okay, some more questions coming in here. Spooey, do you want to ask your question or do you want me to ask it? Spooey. Okay, I'll ask you. So what would happen if attendees are not following the rules?
Well,
rule breakers. Which happens with alcohol.
It does happen with alcohol. We've always had rules for our events. Mostly, yeah. I think most events I go to, there are rules and there's etiquette and there are systems in place, and you have to abide by them. And really, what's happening now is there's more of those things, and people might need a helping hand in understanding how to navigate those kind of additional measures. You need to have plenty of information and signage available to them that says, please keep apart, or please wear a mask, or please wash your hands, and just kind of be reminding them through the event. Staff is a big one around this. So we're going to need more people, which is kind of great in terms of the kind of job creation part. And we are going to need more staff at events. We're going to need more staff to manage queues, to be letting people in. We're going to need staff to be reminding people. I don't know, has anyone been, in the supermarket? They now have a person who's just their job is managing the queue and helping you say, actually, wait until this person's gone through, right, you can go through now, and just helping people navigate the world. So I would suggest that you need people at your event whose sole responsibility it is to make sure that these things are adhered to and in place. What happens if people won't do that is you ask them politely a couple of times and then you ask them to leave, essentially, because the measures that you have in place will be for a reason, and they will be for the safety of everybody, and we can't compromise on
that. Okay, so Jessica, did you want to ask your question? Where is she? Is she online? Did you want to ask yours?
Yeah. So in the case of high-risk events, obviously having certain safety and security measures in place, especially in registration and entrances, is going to affect the customer journey. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on how that would change and how it could be managed as well.
Yeah, I think it really needs thinking about, because people don't like queuing for ages. They don't like admin. So we need to find ways of making these experiences slick for them. And I think it all starts with before the event. So actually communicating to people what to expect on the day will help speed up the process. So if they know that they're going to be subject to temperature scanning or whatever it is, and asking people to kind of allow enough time for that, they'll already kind of mentally be prepared for, right, it might take me a little bit longer to get checked in. Staffing is another thing. So just having enough staff on hand to kind of help keep the process moving so that it's not too slow or too boring for people. And other things, things like if you need to do taking people's data and health screening and health questionnaires, can that be done before the day? Can it be done electronically by email? So you're just cutting out a kind of a boring task, I shouldn't call it a boring task, a necessary task on the day of the event. So I think that probably will go some way to kind of alleviating those pains. The other thing I've thought about is how can we make it fun? And I urge you to think about how we can view these things as not just necessities, but actually sort of put some kind of creative thought into how we can make it an enjoyable experience for people. I guess the example I've been thinking of is I've been thinking about Christmas. Because I love Christmas and I'm hopeful for some Christmas events, and how can you kind of build in something like having your temperature taken into the magic of a Christmas event? So the event I was thinking of was like specifically a children's event, but it could work for adults as well. But can you get elves dressed up doing the temperature scanning? Can you make it fun for the kids to be doing that, where you're scanning them and you're saying it's part of the Christmas magic, and this is like, we'll scan you in so you get to see Santa, and like make it part of that narrative. And those are quite extreme example like for kids, but I think there is a way of translating that for adults to make it experiential and kind of take away some of the pain and the kind of the clinicalness of what you're doing, and get creative. We're event managers, so like get creative about like how you can make that experience a little bit more fun, and therefore people, I don't think, will feel that it is as arduous or as much of a task.
It's true, and people's expectations are that those security measures will be in place, so it's making it slightly less tedious. Sarah, do you want to ask you another question, Sarah Bennett?
Sure. So I'm just wondering if you've got sort of recommendations on things to look out for when getting suppliers. Like, how do we make sure we know that they're following the guidelines and stuff as well?
Yeah. I think you just need to talk to them. I think you need to be having conversations with them. You will see that there are certain sort of qualifications and accreditations out there that you'll start to see popping up that say, we've done a certain amount of training, or we've kind of put these measures in place with the equipment that we use, or like venues in particular. And so I think the suppliers will start shouting about their credentials in this area a little bit, so they should be open to those conversations. If you got in touch with a supplier and was like, what measures have you put in place, or like, how are you being more COVID safe, and they were like, we've not thought about it, I'd be very concerned. I'd be very, very concerned about what's going on there. So I think you'll find like most suppliers will have been taking some steps already, and I guess it's just a case of aligning what you think are the necessary steps with what they're doing, and just kind of being open to a dialogue about what adjustments can be made there. But yeah, I think everybody's on it at the moment, because otherwise,
and learning together. Yeah,
exactly.
Sarah, does that answer your question? Good. Roxy, did you want to ask your question? Where are you, Roxy? Is she there? I'll ask it for you, Roxy. Does insurance for events now cover us if we were to cancel or change the event due to the new health and safety guidelines from the government?
Insurance. It's very tricky. There is no answer to that question, because it depends on your insurance policy, and it depends what policy you already had in place, or if it's a new insurance policy. I'm fairly certain that some of the clauses will be changing. I know that there's been a lot of debate over force majeure, essentially. Lots of contracts that were in place said that if an act of God meant that the event couldn't happen, then you'd get your money back. But there's a whole debate about, well, does COVID count as force majeure? And it's a very technical area that I won't delve into much, because I'm not a lawyer. But yeah, I think it depends on the contracts that you have. I know that a lot of contracts with venues and suppliers, we're now adding in like new terminology, and people are open to being fair. People are open to saying, okay, well, like let's have a discussion about what would happen in the case of COVID cancellation. But yeah, it's a pretty contentious issue at the moment, especially in the wedding industry. A lot of couples have really struggled to know who is liable for what in this situation, and it's a very, very tricky one. Yeah,
across all private events. Hi. Hannah's just asking a quick question around, I know you talked a bit about the government guidelines and it being slightly clear, somewhat clear. Is there another kind of channel or governing body that for the events industry that you keep an eye on as well?
Yeah, there's a few. HireSpace is pretty good. HireSpace produce there's like a daily news bulletin that's kind of event specific. Mash Media put out quite a lot of content as well, just sort of like updates and guidelines. And some of it's kind of thought pieces about maybe it will look like this, maybe it'll look like that. Some of it's kind of more communicating where we are. But those two are the kind of first that come to mind on event industry specific resources.
All right, I think we're almost at time, so I'm going to put it out there. If anybody wants to switch their microphone on and ask one or two final questions, and then we'll have to let everybody else go. I'm sure Zoe will hang on if anybody does want to final questions, because she loves, well, we all love talking about this. But does anybody want to ask one or two more questions? There's lots on the chat, but I'm reading them out, so I'm just asking if anyone wants to ask themselves. Go on, Sally.
I have a question about you, Bex. You seem to be in really beautiful light. Is it? Are you in the south of France, or is it?
No, I'm in a bedroom. I think it's because I put a lamp on because it's getting dark.
It's a good look.
Oh well, there you go. Maybe I just won't move from here. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, are you sure? There's a few more on here. I feel bad that I'm leaving people, but maybe we'll say goodbye to the majority, and if anybody wants to stay on and ask questions, it might be an easier way. So thank you, Zoe. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Super, super lovely session, and nice to see the faces of people I haven't seen for a long time, and to meet some new people. I think Zoe referenced, and I'm sure you guys have seen already on our website, that we have got a masterclass coming up. It's from, get this right, Wednesday the 26th of August, I think that's when it is, 1 till 4 p.m. There's lots of information on the Event Academy website, but essentially it's about how best to organise virtual events, which is obviously a growing part of all events. I think it's going to be an integral part of any event that we put on. There's going to be the virtual element of it. So have a look, see what you think. We'd love to see you guys there. I think there is a cost associated to it, but it's minimal. I think, sorry, I'm not in head office. I think we said £45, so it's not a huge cost. But we've got incredible guest speakers that are going to be there. Aside from that, I hope it's been a really useful session for everybody, and no doubt we'll see you all again on forthcoming webinars. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.